Howdy folks, Dave here at Thunder Mesa Studio, where as you can see, I'm sporting some awesome new swag. And you can find items just like this at the Thunder Mesa Studio Spreadshirt shop, and there's a link to that in the description right down below this video. If you haven't already figured it out, we're going to be working on the Gruesome Gulch layout once again today. My self-imposed deadline is coming up really fast, so we are in the final weeks of this build, and frankly, there's still quite a bit to do. So in this video today, I'm going to be tying up a lot of loose ends, mostly by finishing off the vast majority of Cadaver Caverns. I need to finish up ballasting all of the track through the caverns. There's a couple of short sections left. And then I want to build some more rock work over in this area, kind of tie these two areas together with a tunnel portal back through here, and that'll hide all of this exposed wiring. Then I've got 3 bridges to build, one here over the lower track, and then 2 that cross the River of Lost Souls. And then I want to add a little bit more themed lighting in the form of some LEDs hidden up here under Skull Butte by some rock work that's going to be hanging down. That's a lot, but I think the most logical place to start will be in ballasting this short section of track right here. So let's get to it. First of all, I want to keep glue and debris out of the river down below, so I'm going to put a piece of masking tape right here. I've got my Gruesome Gulch ballast, which I get by sifting volcanic cinders that I collected up near Flagstaff, Arizona. And starting back here where the track sort of disappears around the corner, ballast all the way up to the edge of the river. Just using a Dixie cup. Then I like to use a soft, dry paintbrush to tamp the ballast down between the ties. Make sure it's not up in the webbing of the rail where it might cause problems with the equipment. And I want to fill in over here along this embankment with some larger rocks. Now I'll just wet it all down using some wet water. This is just regular tap water with a couple of drops of dish detergent in there to break the surface tension. Now I can dribble on some diluted white glue. This is diluted 3:1 with water, 3 parts water to 1 part glue. Make sure it soaks in. When you see it pooling up white like that, that's how you know you have enough glue. While the glue on the ballast dries, I'm going to sculpt a piece of foam to go between here and here that'll hide all that wiring and create a kind of rough tunnel opening for this track. Okay, I think I've got this the way I want it with the hot wire cutter. I'm just going to gouge it here and there with my utility knife. Cut some pieces away, break some pieces away. Breaking is better than cutting when it comes to modeling rocks. It's more natural looking. Okay, and I'm ready for the wire brush. Now the heat gun. That should work. Now I just want to paint just the sides and the back of this before I install it, because I won't be able to reach those later. I'll just glue that into place. Some good old Loctite Power Grab adhesive. I've been thinking a lot about this little short section of curved bridge right here. And I think what I actually want is a natural stone bridge that looks like it's about to crumble and fall to the ground. So that's what we're going to do here. The idea up here on the ceiling of a cavern, just to put successive layers of jagged rock like this, one right in front of the other until they come right out to the edge, and that should make for a pretty convincing illusion of an underground cavern. Now for something that's hanging down like this, against gravity, I like to put a couple of drywall screws in just right through the foam. Well, I'm pretty happy with the way this is looking so far, but what I want to do next is come back with some Sculpting and blend in some of these rock formations here, especially along this top edge and over here in the corner. I want to do that now because the Sculpting is going to take a little while to dry, and I don't want it to hold up the rest of the project. I use Sculpting a lot for things like this, and if you watch my channel, you know this. It's a plaster and cellulose product. That means it's like paper mache, but it's infused with extra plaster for more strength. I like it for applications like this because it has a texture to it when it dries. It's not just smooth like regular plaster or foam putty. So I like a pretty thick mixture. You can see this is really thick stuff. It dries faster that way, and it's much easier to work with. And you can pick Sculpting up from many hobby suppliers, art supply outlets like Blick Art Materials, and you can find it online from Amazon.com. It's made by the American Art Clay Company. This stuff is really good at filling gaps like this. Just take a little pinch, shove it back in there, and then I could just use a soft paintbrush, come back and blend it in with the carved rock, and once that's painted, it'll be pretty seamless. My goal all along this top edge is just to create a transition between the scenery up above and these jaggedy rock formations down here inside the caverns. I mentioned the drying time of Sculpting. It does take a little while to dry, usually, depending on your relative humidity. Several hours, 4, 8, depending on how thick you put it on, 12 hours, overnight a lot of times. And some might be asking, well, why don't I just mix the paint in with the Sculpting and save a step? Because of course after this is dry, I'm going to come back and paint everything. Well, I've tried that. And what I found is that latex paint greatly increases the drying time. Like it can take days to dry if you mix it with latex paint. So it's actually faster in the long run to put it on, raw and white like this, and then come back and paint it afterwards. And while all this dries, I can start work on the final 2 bridges across the River of Lost Souls. Both of the bridges that will cross the river inside the caverns are going to be built in pretty much the same way, very similar to how I did the curved trestle across the gulch a little bit earlier. I've laser cut some tie strips, some 6x6 ties. So I cut it out of some 1/8 inch thick basswood. And then I've got some stringers. For the lower bridge, I'm going to use these 12x12s. This is a bit of a cheat because the actual stringers on a bridge like this would probably be made up of, stacked 6x12s. But, we cheat a little bit on Gruesome Gulch sometimes. So we're going to use some 12x12s. And first thing I need to do is put these together. Got a couple little spacer blocks for each end. And then the tie strips will just get glued right on top of this. This is the lower of the 2 bridges I'm building right here. And it actually is not completely straight. It curves a little bit at this end. So I am cutting through the webbing between the ties so I can curve this tie strip. After the glue dried, I went back and removed all of the webbing between the ties because I don't really want that to show. And now I'm just kind of randomly breaking ties here and there. I want this bridge once again to look like it's about to collapse any second now. Now I can stain the ties. This lower bridge is something rather unusual for a railroad. It's actually going to be a suspension bridge. So I need to add some 8x8 beams down here for it to be suspended by. So I've removed the plastic ties from the span across the river, and now I can glue my bridge deck underneath there. I'm going to use some good old Ducko cement contact adhesive. I'm going to put a thin layer on the bottom of the rails. Now I can slide the bridge deck underneath. Make sure it's properly positioned. Then I've got a couple of blocks of foam, which I've cut to the height. I can slide them under here, and those will act as clamps, applying upward pressure on the bottom of the bridge until this glue dries. Check it with my HO standards gauge, also with a piece of rolling stock. And I'll put some weight on here with my 1, 2, 3 blocks. I've let all the Sculpting dry overnight. And now before I do any more work on the bridges, I just want to get a quick coat of the scenic base color on here. Because, you know, that's going to take a little time to dry too. Big part of making anything is waiting for stuff to dry. I am spiking the rail on the bridge, but you know, only about every 5th tie, just enough to keep it in gauge, using my Xuron spiking pliers and some Micro Engineering 30-106 small rail spikes. Back to this stone bridge over here. I want it to look like it's being propped up by some beams. This is a 12 by 12. It's just about on the verge of collapsing. Piece of broken board right here. Now I can ballast this just like I did down below. Now I can build the rest of the bridge in place. I'm going to start with these retaining wall abutments down below here, just using some coffee stir sticks and 8x8s, gluing each one in place with some Eileen's tacky glue. Now I can start installing the uprights or piers for my suspension bridge. And these are just some 3/16 inch dowels. I just have to make sure I get them the proper distance apart so all the equipment will clear coming and going. It's about 3.5 inches minimum. I use my my hot wire tool to drill a hole straight down through the foam, about 1 inch. And I've cut these about 8 inches long, so 1 inch, 1 full inch is embedded down in the foam, and then 7 inches sticks up, or 28 scale feet, so they're 28 scale feet high. Now back here about another 12 scale feet behind the uprights, I want to have the anchors. Those just come out of the ground at an angle like so. Now I'm tying these towers together with some simple 4x6 cross braces. Now the fun part of this, of course, is going to be running the cables. And I'm using some crochet thread for that. I'm going to start by throwing a little lasso over this anchor post. I'm going to add some CA. Make sure it stays where I want it to stay. Now I've looped it about 3 times around the top of each of the uprights. Now I just need to tie this end off down at this anchor. Now I can hear you guys out there, those of you that are of an engineering mindset. I can hear you saying, oh no, a railroad would never have a bridge like that. And for those who would think that, I just want to remind them that this is a railroad that grows through a fantastical underworld of ghosts, goblins, demons, banshees, etc. In other words, it's a fantasy. Don't take it all too seriously, okay? I want to paint this with some diluted white glue to stiffen the rope so it'll hang where I want it to. Now I want to add the connecting cables between these support beams down below and the main cable. And I figured I should probably do both of them at the same time on each side. That way they'll be even. Once again, just using a little lasso and putting it around that beam right down there. Well, put just a dab of CA on the line. Hold that in place. I think I should get that to stick. I pray to the glue gods. Yes. And just trim these off. And now I want to stain the cable rusty red with some diluted acrylics. And when both sides are done, we've got something that looks like this. Very Indiana Jones. I like it. I've decided to do a little bit more work on the river itself while I'm over here. I wanted to add some surface ripples to the water, so I'm using some gloss Mod Podge for that. Just kind of swirling it on with a soft brush. And when that's dry, it should give me a shinier look of water, but shouldn't add too much distortion at all to the ghost projections coming from down underneath. The trickiest part about doing something this, of course, is working around the existing scenery without getting without making everything shiny, which is not something we want. It's just the water. I just finished assembling and painting the upper bridge, and I'm keeping things really simple on this one. It's only about 22 feet long, so it's going to be an unsupported span except for at each end. And when I get it in there, it should make for a pretty dramatic looking scene. So let's go install it now. All right. Just let the glue dry on that for a few minutes and we'll see where we're at. And while that glue dries, I can finish up the rest of this scenic painting. Going over all of these new formations with the usual colors, a little granite gray, some dark blue gray. Just kind of dry brushing over the top to bring out the details. And I'll punch it up here and there with some light blue. Give it that chilly caverns look. Dark blue gray is great for bringing out the shadows. Now I'm adding a couple of more LEDs to the caverns. Add a little bit more themed lighting. I've got a green one that's going to point right towards the face of doom there. And then a blue one. Just going to point up here at this natural rock bridge. And that's one of the reasons I put this particular formation right here, was to be able to have a place to hide these 5mm LEDs. I'll use my hot wire tool to cut a channel in the foam for the wiring. And this will all be hidden by the fascia once I put that on. I've just been painting it black as I go. That's just for my my own satisfaction, so I can visualize what it's all going to look like. But this is actually all going to be covered with fascia. Use a little black gaffer's tape to hold that wire in place. Then before I hook them up, I like to use just a 9-volt battery down here so I can test the direction. Wow, that looks pretty good, just like that. Yeah. So those are both working. Now I can wire these together and hook them up to the DC power bus for the lab. And now I can install the rest of my bats. Go to a hole. Push them right into the foam. Now I'm going back over a lot of this real rock that I added with some colored chalks to bring it back more closely to the color of the sculpted rockwork. Now I'm going to spray all that with a clear matte acrylic varnish to lock it into place. And then I have one final detail for the River of Lost Souls. Got to have a boatman to ferry the dearly departed to the great beyond. And this is a 3D printed skeleton from Mini Prints that once again, I broke and rearranged all of his joints to put him in this position. The casket, I'm afraid I don't know where that came from. That was given to me by a friend, and I don't know where he got it from. But I'm sure any casket would do. And that just kind of tops the whole scene off, don't you think? Well, not much left to do now except clean all the track through here and see if the trains still run. And that's going to do it for this installment of the Gruesome Gulch build, but rest assured there's a lot more coming real soon, so don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and hit that notification bell if you want to see more. You can also follow Thunder Mesa over on Instagram at thunder.mesa and find out all that's new on the Thunder Mesa Studio website at thundermesa.studio. And of course, if you really like what we're doing here at the channel and want to show your support, you can head on over to patreon.com/thundermesa like these nice folks did, and show your support there. Until next time, keep moving forward, my friends. Adios for now. What do you mean this hat looks stupid? I like it.